After over a year delay, A Quiet Place Part 2 is released this week in theaters. And this was the first film I returned to the theater to watch since everything shut down. Things haven't really changed a lot. The lockdown really didn't change the way people are in theaters, as there were people chatting all through the entire film while I sat and attempted to soak in all of the silence. I guess some things never change, as I had to move twice when I saw A Quiet Place, the first one, in the theaters the last time. Shitty theater experience aside, here's some thoughts on John Krasinski's latest installment in the Quiet Place universe. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. While you might be watching this video on the Kings of Horror Network, I urge you to click over to my ML Miller Frights YouTube page and give it a like. Please share with all of your buddies. Click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. A Quiet Place Part 2 is new in theaters this week. It's directed by John Krasinski and written by John Krasinski, Scott Beck, and Bryan Woods. A Quiet Place Part 2 opens with John Krasinski's Lee Abbott parking his truck and strolling down an empty street in a small Midwestern town. The title card says Day 1, and we soon find where everyone is gathered, a good old-fashioned baseball game. But the game is interrupted when a giant meteor falls from the sky and crashes in the distance. After a well-choreographed scene of chaos and mayhem as the first alien monsters attack the screaming public, the storyline shifts right where the last film left off, with Lee having sacrificed himself to save his family, and his wife Evelyn, played by Emily Blunt, deaf daughter Reagan, played by Millicent Simmons, smooshed-faced son Marcus, played by Noah Jupe, and Evelyn's new baby grabbing a few essentials and silently leaving the farm to attempt to find civilization in this world inhabited by destructive aliens who are attracted to their prey through sound. On their way, they run into a family friend, Emmett, played by Cillian Murphy, who survives like a hermit in a factory and hides in the pipes whenever the aliens pass by. Having lost his own family, Emmett is a traumatized and broken man. A Quiet Place Part 2 is a well-made film. Krasinski sets up some solid scares. He utilizes the silence theme well, building some extremely tense scenes and doling out one suspenseful scenario after another. While Krasinski is only in the film in a flashback, he impacts the story heavily, and when the family run into Murphy's Emmett, the contrast between Lee's dedication to keep his family safe and Emmett's loner mentality of every man for himself is immense, as the story sort of leans on him to take over Lee's role. Now, Evelyn is no pushover, and the kids aren't either, as exemplified in an early scene where the three of them incorporate what they have found out about the aliens in the last film to thwart the alien attack. I do find it interesting that at the beginning of the film, there is a move to replace Krasinski's role with Emmett, but the tonal shift through the film is to show that this family, battle-weary as they are, can handle themselves. This is as close to a prevalent theme this film has as it sort of simply continues the story that took place in the first film. I think therein lies the problem with A Quiet Place Part 2. The stakes are high, they were in the original, but unlike most horror sequels which double down on the horror elicited in the original and go bigger and broader in terms of themes and scope, Part 2 simply continues the tale with the same stakes as the first. Having a baby is still a hindrance. Walking around in bare feet is too. Society has crumbled and every man is looking out for himself, but that was established in the original too with the old man and the woman. Now, Evelyn and company don't have their own environment to control and are much more at the mercy of the aliens out in the open and looking for a new home. But there's no thematic expansion here. We get to see a little bit of the meteor that crashes to the Earth in the distance, but basically the origins of these monsters, what their purpose is, and why they're here on Earth and killing everything in their path is never explored or revealed. I appreciate Krasinski deciding not to give away all of his cards and not feel the pressure to shed light on the true nature of the monsters completely, but I would have appreciated a tease. A crumb, a morsel, just a little bit to keep me interested and intrigued by these monsters and wanting to know more. Because there really is no plot development as to what these monsters are, the second installment kind of feels unnecessary. We don't know anything more about the rest of the world or the monsters than we did in the first movie. Telling the next couple days in the life of what's next with the Abbott family is interesting to see what happens to them after the credits rolled in the first movie, but even though we find out where they're going next, there really is nothing about part 2 that felt necessary. We get to see some great carnage in the opening scene, though if you've seen the trailer, there's not much more to it than what was repeated to viewers over and over for the last year as this film collected dust on the shelves. The aliens are still destructive and deadly. It's not like we get to see the baby version of the creature, or even a variety of them. There's no depiction of an alien family that somehow mirrors the dynamics of the Abbott family or anything like that. And again, that's not really what I wanted. Still, with the menace and their weaknesses exposed in the original, everything feels very repetitious when they show up in part 2. And I'll tell you, if I never see another shot of a foot silently pressing down onto the ground, it'll be too soon. One thing that perplexes me is the kind of inane design of the aliens. Their heads are basically all ears, so they can track their prey. They don't have eyes, but they do have a mouth. Though there really is no scene that shows the aliens eating people, I guess one might assume that that's what they're doing. Or do they simply have a bloodlust to hunt and kill? It's never established. I never understood, though, why, for a monster that relies so much on sound to function, that they make so much damn noise. These monsters are constantly screeching and clicking and hissing. Wouldn't a creature relying on sound to hunt be more effective if they were silent? I don't get it. Sure, the screeches make them a little bit scarier, but the aspect of the design doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think presenting them as silent killers makes them much more in theme with the film and a little scarier. Krasinski once again proves that he knows what he's doing behind the camera. I think A Quiet Place Part 2 feels unnecessary and uneventful. There's nothing in Part 2 that we didn't already get plenty of in Part 1. It's just that despite the short bit at the beginning, Part 2 suffers from not having Krasinski's charisma to follow on screen as we did in Part 1. Murphy's arc is interesting, but never really comes to a successful resolution. The shift to making the kids less of the victims and more active in their destinies was made in the original, but for some reason, Part 2 chooses to hinge the climax on this development as well. All in all, I felt like I already saw A Quiet Place Part 2 before I even saw it. It doesn't offer anything new. It's served up in an entertaining and well-constructed package, but no new ideas, concepts, details, or developments occur, strangely. What about you? Are you going to brave the theaters and see A Quiet Place Part 2 this weekend? Do you have any horror stories about going to see the original in theaters with asshole crowds? Tell me about it down in the comments. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both Gravetrancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside